Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, and of course, your chancellor of cheerfulness, but not to be forgotten, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett coming at you with Robservations, episode number 460. Robcasting to you from the Robservatory. The Robservatory, that's a lot of changes are happening in the Robservatory. I'm telling you, this week, you're going to see more of it. I might even do a new opening title sequence, I think, because why not? Why not? It could be fun. There's all kinds of renovation here, although I need more shelves, but that's okay. How are all of you? I'm sorry it took 2 days off. I had work to do. We did have a very fun Zoom party on Saturday. A lot of people want me to do like Zoom parties on a once-a-week basis. There's a lot of people that have suggested ways to do it. Of course, if Roberto Suarez will help me out, he is the maestro of the Zoom parties. I could see doing that. We'll figure out ways to do it, but it was definitely a successful Zoom party. I certainly got my drink on. I was drinking Jameson, and I used to do Ripped with Rob, and they didn't last very long because I'm old and I don't want to die soon by having my liver quit on me. But I do have to say, I've curtailed my alcoholic intake quite a bit over the last year and a half, and I do enjoy drinking lots of water. However, it was nice to get my drink on. I had not drank Jameson in quite some time, so it was quite enjoyable. So thank you all for participating. It was a lot of fun. I really liked seeing all of you. I hope you guys had fun too. I mean, I'll tell you, the last 2 days, 2 days in a row I took off. I don't think I've taken off two days in a row in this entire quarantine, so I apologize for those of you. A lot of people are like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, man, it was fun to sort of chill out and work here on the Observatory and move stuff around, and that's all I've been doing is moving things around. I decided to do spring cleaning in July in a garage. Boy, that was smart. But anyway, a lot of fun. Caught up with some videos. By the way, I've really been enjoying the fact that a lot of the movie reviewer pundits have had nothing to review, so they're going back and doing classic reviews. I would suggest everybody watch Chris Stuckman. I've been a fan of Chris Stuckman's. I really like watching his channel. He did a retro review of Raiders of the Lost Ark that really put a smile on my face. It was really good. Him and Jeremy Johns have been going back and doing some great reviews, and I've thoroughly been enjoying their content. So if you want to put a smile on your face, go and watch Chris Stuckman's review of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Also, I'd be remiss if we don't mention the passing of Ennio Morricone, one of the great film, pioneers. Over 500 scores he did. What an incredible talent. I posted one of my favorite things he ever did was a piece for The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, which is crazy. I think it was only ever used in the trailer, though. He did other stuff, but it was great. I mean, that film is not great, although Scream Factory did put out a fantastic Blu-ray of it. That was good, which is great. So, and then also Charlie Daniels. The devil went down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal, and he was in a bind because he was way behind. He was looking to make a deal. When he came across, anyway, I used to love that song. I love the storytelling aspects of it. Of course, that story was later immortalized with Ralph Macchio in Walter Hill's version of it, Crossroads. If you've ever seen that, people don't talk about that. I think it's kind of like a forgotten movie, especially in the oeuvre of Walter Hill, but a movie I always liked. Anyway, so Charlie Daniels passed away. Ennio Morricone passed away. I'll tell you, we come, we go. It's so fleeting, so enjoy yourselves, people. Enjoy yourselves. Not a whole lot of movie news. There's a lot of things that have been greenlit and people talking about who's buying what. And I've read, there's a great article about Quibi on Vulture, which I was going to read, but then it was like, pretty much rehashes the whole thing, and then it gets into Jeffrey Katzenberg's whole career. Quibi has been spending a whole lot of money on promotion, and I have to say, credit where credit is due. They have a new Kevin Hart series called Die Hart, where Kevin Hart goes to action film or action hero film school, and John Travolta is his teacher. It looks like one of the best things John Travolta's done in a while. I know. I'm not beyond. I make relentless fun of Quibi, but Die Hard looked like something that I would be interested in doing or watching. Not that I'm going to sign up for Quibi because it might not be here next month, but hey, you never know. We shall see. Although it looked good. I mean, it was something I wanted to watch. Travolta looks good. Kevin Hart looks good. I mean, it's pretty silly. You once you get past the title Die Hard, it didn't. The material was not as great as I would have liked it to have been. But I would watch it. I like Kevin Hart. I like John Travolta. So there you go. Anyway, I was looking for something good to talk about today. Didn't have a lot to talk about, but then I remembered I've got a backlog of letters from all of you that I have been remiss in reading, and I have a new letter. A new letter from Willow Yang, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. And you guys are going to dig it. I'm telling you, you will. So, would anybody be surprised? Let's go back and let's check it out. Gosh, the first letter that I have today, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's going to be a shocker to some of you, but today's first letter comes from my man Ian Samuels, perhaps, I think, the most prolific letter writer in Robservations history, if there is such a thing. But he did write a letter, actually a couple letters. We're going to start with Ian today. Rob and fellow Robservationists, I would like your opinion on my latest project. It's called My Name is Bruce. I know people are going to be like, well, I know. It stars, I think you meant to say it stars, Thomas and Martha Wayne discovering that they cannot have kids. Martha is devastated, feeling like she has let down the man she loves as she is unable to give him the heir that he so desperately wants. They decide to adopt. They visit an old friend of Thomas's, a Dr. Leslie Tompkins at the Gotham City orphanage, in the hope that she can help them find a son. While Thomas talks to Leslie, Martha notices one boy playing by himself. He is an Asian boy playing with a rubber bat and a Bruce Lee action figure. She tries to speak with him as he flaps the bat near her face. Leslie tells them that he was found by the docks, apparently abandoned, and was brought in, so they never knew his name, and he has not begun to speak, or at least hasn't spoken to anyone there. Martha looks at the Bruce Lee action figure and suggests Bruce. This seems to make the boy happy. The story will follow Bruce after his adoptive parents are killed in the care of Alfred, the family's butler, his training with an old friend of Alfred's, and his first outings as Batman, and on to his attempted taking down of the criminal gangs in Gotham City. He will find out about his real parents and their connection to organized crime. Hopefully, this is an interesting and different take on the Batman saga. Last time I tried was to have Bruce Wayne in Victorian London and Batman taking on Jack the Ripper, and it was originally going to be called Gotham by Gaslight. Unfortunately, I discovered that there had already been a Gotham by Gaslight, so I bought it so I could check it out. I did not like it. The story was poor. In Gotham by Gaslight, Jack the Ripper happens to be on the same Atlantic crossing ship as Bruce and continues his killing in Gotham City. For my story, I had Gotham being a district of Whitechapel in London and had Batman investigating the real murders and helping Inspector Abilene. I would be very interested in your opinion on my idea for an Asian Batman. Well, in that comic book with the Joker and Batman in high school, Batman is half Asian, or maybe he's entirely Asian. I didn't read the comic, but it came out, 4 or 5 months ago. I think it's a great idea. I like this idea. I like the idea. I think this is a great Elseworld story. You should pitch it to DC, and they could put it out. Maybe you could do it like a Gotham by Gaslight, but you'd have to incorporate, more of that whole Bruce Lee element into it, martial arts mysticism like Shang-Chi or something. I'm in. Count me in, Ian. I am in on that one. I'd buy that comic. Because why not? And you know what? Because Ian sends in a lot, I'm going to follow it right up with another one. Rob and fellow Robservationists, I would like, if I may, to take a moment to give a mention to yet another anniversary this year. We've had Back to the Future and Jaws and others, but there is another. So join me as we take a jump. to the left, and then a step to the right, with your hands on your hips. You bring your knees in tight, but it's the pelvic thrust that will send us insane. Let's do the time warp again. Lover of the Universal Monster films, 50s sci-fi, and schlock movies, Richard O'Brien created the Rocky Horror Show, a stage show in 1972. Friend and fellow performer in the musical Air, Tim Curry would play Frankenfurter at the first performing... Actually, hang on. Friend and fellow performer in the musical Hair, Tim Curry would play Frankenfurter at first, performing the part using a German accent. Also playing alongside O'Brien and Curry were Patricia Quinn, Australian tap dancer Little Nell, and singer Meatloaf, who on stage played both Eddie, the delivery boy, and Dr. Scott. It became a huge hit in both the London West End and New York and Broadway. 20th Century Fox became interested in producing a movie, and so Rocky Horror Picture Show was born. O'Brien chose to add the word picture to identify the difference between the stage show and the movie. Also, the script wasn't long enough, so O'Brien wrote the song The Time Warp as an additional scene, including a set piece of Little Nell's tap dancing. 20th Century Fox insisted on having American actors, and so director Jim Sharman and O'Brien auditioned a number of stars. Elvis Presley showed interest in playing Eddie, and horror legend Vincent Price was considered for the part of the criminologist. Barry Bostwick would play Brad, and Susan Sarandon would play Janet. It had its premiere on the 15th of August, 1975, 2 months and 10 days after my birth. That isn't relevant, but I thought I'd mention it. Interesting addition was the reference to a number of classic paintings, including American Gothic by Grant Wood, who sounds like the name given to a fluffer on a porn shoot, and Whistler's Mother. The image of Whistler's mother in the criminologist's book is in fact a photo of Meatloaf in period dress. There is connections to Hammer horror as well. Oakley Court, which is the stand-in for Frank's Castle, had been used in a number of Hammer horror movies as they were based at Bray's studio next door. Also, Rocky's birth tank was the one that was used in the Hammer horror Revenge of Frankenstein. The movie starts with the lips of Patricia Quinn, who dressed as a cinema usher and sang science fiction double feature in the stage show, but the song for the movie is sung by O'Brien. This was Jim Sharman's idea. O'Brien's voice, but Quinn's lips, added to the androgynous nature of the movie. The movie suffered bad press and walkouts before Fox pulled it from theaters, but copies got out to college campuses and midnight show theaters throughout America, many of which still show it today. Also in Germany, the Museum Leichspiel, Dieter will have to correct my pronunciation, still show it today. It has become one of the continuously long-running movies of all time. Science fiction double feature mentions a number of 50s classics: Michael Rennie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flash Gordon in Silver Underwear, Claude Rains, The Invisible Man, and of course Fay Wray and King Kong. It's a fun romp with great songs that will get stuck in your head, so put on your fishnets and join me on a journey to transsexual Transylvania. Ian. Well, Ian, that is a good... I like that. I definitely believe that we should all be celebrating. That is a good anniversary. I thoroughly... I'm a big fan of that. So there you go. Man, how many times have I seen Rocky Horror? I've seen it a lot. I've never been part of a shadow cast, but I've seen it a lot. So there you go. Another loquacious letter writer is Omar94, who was in the chat on Saturday. Hi, Rob. I know it doesn't make much of an impact on whether a movie, TV show, comic book, video game, etc. is good or not, but I've always had an affinity for world building. Even if I don't end up not enjoying a movie, great world building can still be really good. That was one of the highlights about the Star Wars prequels, was how each planet was completely different. Naboo was nothing like Coruscant. Coruscant was nothing like Mustafar. Mustafar was nothing like Geonosis, etc. That was something lacking for me in Return of the Jedi, as Endor felt very bland. The sequel trilogy lacked world building too, as those movies just did knockoffs of planets from previous movies, like Jakku being Tatooine, Starkiller Base being Hoth, and the planet with Maz Kanata being like Endor. Sometimes I feel a little disappointed when there is potential in a world, but I don't get to see it through, or enough of it. Like in 1989's Batman. Gotham City looks huge in that movie, but when you watch the movie, it feels small, since you don't really explore that much of the city, as a lot of the scenes take place in a very few places. That's just me. I'm not sure how others feel about world building. Hey, I love world building. I mean, it's hard on a uh, in cinema because there's only so many things you can afford. I thought The Fifth Element did a pretty good job of world building. Of course, you have Blade Runner, but again, all these movies, they also don't go to many places. Valerian, and I thought Valerian, Luc Besson Valerian is a completely miscast film, but there's things in it that I really, really like, and I think the visuals are, they're rather incredible. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I mean, I do like, I think world building's great when it's done well. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to most about Dune, to be honest. I can't wait. There's a lot going on in Denis Villeneuve's Dune, at least according to the script. I can't wait to see the world building. This next letter comes from Nate J. Hey, Robert, I just finished watching Hamilton with my family. After the movie was over, I pointed out to my family that the play did not show that Hamilton married into a slave owner family, the Schuyler family, and he conducted transactions, selling and purchasing slaves for them. My family all kind of nodded, and my sister doubted me, and they continued to talk about how great the play was. I totally felt like a Debbie Downer. The play never really discussed slavery, which was huge for that time. I agree this play is amazing, but strays far from the truth. Is it bad when movies and plays stray away from history to convey a great story? I personally loved Green Book. Also, it's bad to point out historical inaccuracies immediately after a movie's over. I felt like it could have held on to those facts and my family members researched themselves, but in times like today, I felt I had to share. Well, Nate, these are very good questions. And here's what I would have to say. Most of real life is boring. Like, how much sitting around do you do? Like, just on a daily basis. And, Alfred Hitchcock once said that great drama is life with all the dull bits cut out. Now, should I say that Alexander Hamilton, the idea that he was a slave owner being removed from that play, is somehow not dealing with the truth? Well, yes. But I would say this about slavery. For hundreds of years, it was normal. It was monstrous, and the fact that we sold people into bondage is horrific. But the slave trade at the point that it was at the time was global in its reach. And remember, I mean, in Africa itself, there were tribes fighting other tribes, taking their people and then selling them. So the slave trade was a monstrous, insidious idea. And the idea that human beings were sold as chattel, it's not a great idea. It never was. And it was horrible. And our long tradition, which went on, I don't know if you want to call it a tradition, but it was part of real life, and it was awful. But that said, if you're telling a story, I just have to assume that everybody of any family of means had slaves or had some connection to slaves or was doing business with people that were slave owners, because it was the norm for a very long time. Was it right? Certainly not. But if you want to go back and deal with the fact that everybody, especially, the South and also in the North, there was indentured servitude as well, that we had slaves. And I think that when you're telling a story, I mean, when you choose to tell a story, and this is one of the things I don't like, nowadays we see a lot of our founding fathers who had problematic relationships, slave owners themselves, people that even wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, all of these things, they came out of a culture where slavery existed. Did all of them approve of it? Certainly not. Did people own slaves? Yes, because that was the norm of the day. But these are the people that were also stepping up to the plate to get rid of slavery. The fact that in a slave-owning society like the United States, that we actually had statesmen The fact that the Civil War was fought, there were people that were not fans of it, and that's where it all began. People changing the status quo and fighting for what's right. If we were going to go back, and you're going to get to a point in American history where anybody, pretty much who was anybody, that had any effect on the forging of this nation is going to have some connection with slavery. Alexander Hamilton, like a lot of people, had a change of heart. He became more educated, more understanding about this subject matter, and did what he could do. Just like we do now. People are complicated. This idea, I don't understand where this idea came that everybody has to be perfect all the time, and now because of certain imperfections, like if somebody did something this bad, and then they also did a lot of good, somehow their good is negated by what they've done bad. People are complex. They're gray. You know, there's a lot of people that can't live up to their own ideals. And human beings are complex creatures. And this idea that, look, as far as I'm concerned, I lead my life thinking that everybody's done some shitty things in their lives. Everybody. Everybody's done shitty things. It just depends where you want to look. Do they do shitty things on a macro level or a micro level? I don't know. But I just assume I lead my life thinking that one day somebody's going to do something just like I've disappointed many people by doing certain things. I just assume that every single human being is not perfect. And I don't understand why people think that they're supposed to be. I don't get that. Who's perfect on a daily basis? There are times I get up out of bed sometimes. I'm like, I should dust in here. I didn't. I think about doing it. I'm like, my life would be better if I dusted. No, I'm not equating that to other things. I'm just saying that on a micro level and on a macro level, people do things good and bad all the time. That's life. And this idea that we expect historical figures to be perfect, and if they did things like, if you were living in a society that slavery was the norm for hundreds of years, everybody that we're talking about will have lived in a situation where they're going to have to have dealt with slavery in some form or another. But that clearly was a way, that was something that a lot of people objected to. And people became educated, and they fought, and it took a long time to get rid of it. So this idea that we're going to go and pillory all of the founding fathers for living in a time when slavery was of the norm, and since those people were usually pretty upper crust when it came to the society that they lived in, well, I mean, everybody is going back far enough, we'll have to get rid of everyone. Well, people have to change. That's the whole point. You know, Ennio Morricone died, and he scored a movie called The Mission, if you haven't seen it. But that film, part of it is about Robert De Niro's change of heart. You know, he makes a huge character change in terms of his belief system. Now, there wouldn't be a movie if someone said, you can't have that character have that change of heart. I'm not going to put up with that. I mean, all of human civilization is about that. It's about learning and growing and changing and fighting injustice. And sometimes it's the biggest perpetrators of that injustice who learn the errors of their ways and turn and become the greatest crusaders to get rid of that injustice. And I just think that I don't think you're being a Debbie Downer. But on the other hand, you should look at Hamilton for what it is and not what it is not. So, yeah. That's what I would say. But a good letter. And I'm glad your family liked it. This letter comes from CB. Just writing to say hello from the land of Oz, and to thank you for your amazing show as a fan of fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. I've never found a more welcoming channel or forum for my hobbies. Well, I'm glad you feel that way, CB. That's what I hope to achieve. It was hard just writing this letter, so I can imagine what you must do every day, so very many thanks. But unfortunately, because of the time difference, I'm unable to watch you live most of the time, but one of my daily priorities is to catch up. Just a little introduction. I will not bore you too long, and maybe a familiar story to many that congregate on your network. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, if you have said many times, was a wonderful time to be a geeky kid. rushing home from school to watch the reruns of my favorite Star Trek series, the original series, Doctor Who, Tom Baker Years, Space 1999, and Star Blazers. Salivating at the bit, waiting for the next insert long list of great directors from the day, greatest movies, gathering around with friends to play D&D. We even made up our own role-playing game with a mashup of our favorite franchises, Star Wars, Star Trek, Alien, etc. Just imagine stormtroopers battling Starfleet security, TIE fighters buzzing a Constitution-class starship, or a Star Wars bounty hunter battling xenomorphs. Lounging around, drawing starships, power armor, weapons for our made-up people, discussing tactics and attributes. That was so much fun because it all came from our geeky little brains. This was way before the mush became so popular. And as you so often talk about on your shows, turning great novels into films, my most fond hope for this, and one of my favorite sci-fi writers, is Arthur C. Clarke and his Rama books, his Gentry Lee collaborations. Tonally and thematically, Arrival, The Martian, and Interstellar, putting those films together, and a great Ripley-like female lead. I could have some of that. In my humble opinion, those films were inspired by his writing. I agree with that. Rendezvous with Rama was a great book. Also love to see his 2001 sequels, remake 2001 following the book more closely. As films or TV shows, I'm hearing the 2001 theme in my head as I write this. Talk about verisimilitude. Wow. Thanks, and have a better day, CB. Well, CB, I have often said, you and I, first of all, park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. I think they should absolutely remake 2010. Because one of the things Peter Hyams did for 2010 was he changed it to make it more relevant for the time, and he turned the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States into a plot point of the movie, whereas anyone who's read the book knows that the Russians and the Americans team up to go back to Jupiter and Saturn in order to beat the Chinese. So in a way, Arthur C. Clarke's book, as many great science fiction writers are, or do, or prove, was a lot more forward-thinking than even Peter Hyams was back in 1984. I mean, it's hard to believe that if you really think about it, that movie came out 15 years after 2001, which is crazy considering it's now been 36 years since 2010 was released. It came out Christmas of 84 along with David Lynch's Dune. So I'm a fan. Like, I would love to see somebody should do the trilogy. They should remake 2010, do 2061, then 3001, The Final Odyssey. I mean, hell, Keir Dullea is still alive. So you could absolutely, I mean, you couldn't get the young David Bowman going, but you could definitely do the older David Bowman. And with de-aging technology, maybe you could do the young David Bowman. I think it's a great idea. I would love, if somebody asked me, Rob, you can remake anything you want right now, I would remake 2010. And I might call it 2030 or 2050, and then, do something else. But absolutely, I mean, 2001: Space Odyssey, what would be the next year? I mean, because then you went from 2010 to 2061. But, yeah, I would love to see that happen. And you know what? Maybe it will. We live in strange times. You just never, ever know. I mean, I could see that happening. I mean, I absolutely could see that happening. Omar94, back again. Hi, Rob. I'm not sure how you feel about recasting in movie series and TV shows, but I'm mixed on it. Sometimes I can live with it, like Don Cheadle replacing Terrence Howard in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as Howard only appeared in one movie and didn't make a lasting impact on it, compared to someone like Robert Downey Jr. Other times I don't really like it, since the new actor doesn't always live up to the previous, which causes the show to lose its touch, so to speak. For example, when the actor who played Darren in the TV show Bewitched was replaced in later seasons, I felt the show lost its charm when the new actor came in, since the new guy portrayed him in a very different manner. It's true. I'm not sure if you or others are okay with recasting or not, but that's just how I feel. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I mean, sometimes it's either you lose the character entirely or you recast. I mean, look at Saavik. I loved Kirstie Alley as Saavik. Not to take anything away from Robin Curtis, but Robin Curtis was a little bit more one note. she played it too much like the Uber Vulcan, whereas I think that Saavik was a character who was half Vulcan, half Romulan, so she could be passionate. And recasting it's difficult. Obviously, we have the Bond movies, the Batman movies to look at and see, okay, can you recast these roles and have people play them? I think you can, but I don't like it when secondary characters like that. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. Dario, was it Maharis? I want to say, but I'm thinking George Maharis. Definitely strange because the actors were very different vibe. But when they recast people, it's a little tough. How many Zials did we have on Deep Space Nine? But most of the time I can get past it. It depends, unless they're really not up to the task. I mean, Robin Curtis, David, is dead. I'm like, she should have been more. I know Nimoy was. I'll bet Nimoy didn't even know she was supposed to be half Romulan, to be honest. But I definitely think that you're not wrong. I mean, it's tough. It really depends how it's done. So, Martin Lawrence is here. Greetings and salutations, Rob. I'm writing this letter to get your thoughts on the granddaddy of special effects, Ray Harryhausen. I went through his filmography before writing this, and it brought back so many great childhood memories. Valley of the Gwangi, the Sinbad movies, Mighty Joe Young, my favorite being the goat-legged Cyclops. Anyway, I would love to get your input on the great man and your favorite of his creations. Yours sincerely, Martin Lawrence. Well, I have to tell you, I love Ray Harryhausen, and my first experience with him that left an impression was Jason and the Argonauts, because that skeleton battle at the end was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And the movie, Jason and the Argonauts it's not A-list. It's not up there. It's good, but it's not great, maybe. But I think my favorite Ray Harryhausen movie, I know people are going to be like, wait, what? Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Man, did I love that movie when I was a kid. Yes, even the flying saucers as they're spinning around were stop motion. I get that. I understand that. I love the aliens. I love destroying the monuments in Washington, D.C. A flying saucer landing in the Capitol building. When I was a kid, that shit was dope. I loved it. I loved Earth versus the Flying Saucers. So I think Earth versus the Flying Saucers is my favorite Harryhausen movie. But that's because, as a sci-fi fan, I loved it. Loved it. But I'm a huge fan. So Jason and the Argonauts, I like the Sinbad movies. I recently plopped in my Clash of the Titans disc. Can you believe that movie came out in 1981? My God. But I'm a Harryhausen fan. And so for me, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, and I have to go Jason and the Argonauts. Not that his other movies aren't great, but I really like that. I really like those. Terry Flynn sent in a message. Terry Flynn, how about that? Rob and Mike, I've been thinking about how movie theaters will be affected by COVID-19 in the future. My first degree was economics, so apologies if I think in terms of attendance and try to value things like the need for a shared experience. However, the latter has key importance in whether residents of a given country feel the need to watch a movie on the big screen with others, and thus the future value of cinema versus streaming. To illustrate this, I'm going to talk about my first experience of watching Avengers Endgame. I watched it 3 times at the cinema with identical experiences each time, but the first is key. I saw it on the first full day of release in the UK, so no major spoilers had permeated the mainstream unless you went looking for them. Natasha's death was a kick in the gut to me, and I suspect to at least 99% of the people in the theater with me. I cried silently, and I remember hearing multiple sniffs as most Brits there tried to cover the fact they wanted to bawl their eyes out. There were no collective moans. I think I heard one person say quietly, "No." But that was it. And also, interestingly, nobody went wild at the portals scene. You could feel the electricity among viewers, but it was more people sitting up straight and making a fist rather than shouting out like I see in all the reaction videos from the USA and other countries. When it came to Tony's death, we just cried our eyes out. Nobody gave a shit who saw them crying. But crucially, we still remained silent. We let the tears flow into our tissues. Inevitably, the question arises, do Brits need to be at a cinema to watch movies? We don't feed off each other's reactions and don't loudly transmit our own experiences. It's a trait that no amount of immigrants has eroded. Of course, the sheer scale in terms of screen size and sound of a big cinema are desirable when a movie's like Endgame. However, for most films, I suspect the shared experience factor is much less here than in countries where emotion is expressed more often or more freely. In short, if the pandemic continues to hit cinema, I don't honestly think it'll matter to Brits as much as to Americans, Spaniards, Indians, etc. Watching our big flat screen TV gives us most of what we want, and the shared experience is simply not a British trait. Fundamentally, in cinema, our unspoken rule is that you don't make noise. I'll watch future releases as Wave 2 of the virus gets underway with interest. However, if cinema is dealt a mortal blow, I don't think Brits will mind as much as many other countries. Kind regards, Terry, the former Sheriff of Nottingham. Well, again, Terry, what a great letter. That was Terry Flynn, our former moderator here at the Burnettwork. Here's what I'm thinking about cinema, and I've been thinking about it a lot because I love the cinema. I think we're in danger. I think cinemas are in danger. Now, on one hand, right now we're in an interesting transitional period. And right now there's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of movies that have been postponed that cost a lot of money. Two of those that off the top of my head, Tenet and No Time to Die, the new Bond film. Both have reported budgets around $250 million. Now, here's what's important about those two films. With a $250 million budget, the expectation is they're going to gross $1 billion. Hopefully they'll gross $1.5 billion minimum. And the reason they're expected to do that is when you've spent $250 million making a movie. Now, I don't know how much of that, if it's marketing, you might spend another $200 million above and beyond that. That's a lot of money. You're never, ever going to make that back because, okay, you're Tenet, right? You're Christopher Nolan's new movie. They spent $250 million on it. If you throw it onto HBO Max doesn't have money to reimburse you for your costs. And then there's marketing. They've already spent, let's just call it $500 million. It's $500 million was spent on Tenet. It's never going to make its money back. If you put it on HBO Max or whatever, there's no way in God's green earth that Tenet could ever recoup its costs. And remember, they borrowed that money to make Tenet. They didn't have the money. They borrowed it. Studios borrow money to make, so they have to make loan payments back. They're incurring interest payments. You know, the movie was supposed to come out. I mean, right now they're not in trouble with it because it was supposed to come out on the 17th of July, which is, what is that? It's 11 days from now is the original date. So all of their economics were based around that model. But make no mistake, they were expecting $1 billion gross. And with $1 billion gross, they're expecting a certain amount of time. So the banks that they borrowed money from were thinking, oh, okay, we'll start seeing a return in August of 2020. Not anymore. And we don't even know where cinemas are at. Are they ever going to open? Not with the resurgent cases in the United States and all over the world. There's no way. They did not bring, whereas, say, you could say New Zealand brought it under control. People didn't bring it under control. I don't think anyone's in a big hurry to go see movies as much as I want to see Tenet. And I've joked that I'll wear a hazmat suit or I'll wear a scuba suit or something. I don't think people are, even with Tenet, as much as I want to see it, we're in a world of hurt. This thing with cinemas, man, who knows? I think, Terry, I think you might be right. I hate to say it, but we might see that whole business go away. And I don't mean to be, some doomsayer, but I think what you're saying is very astute. So, yeah. This one comes from Pedro Ferreira. I'm sorry, I'm bummed out. I hope movie theaters don't go away, but if they don't start opening soon, I don't know how they're going to survive. And who's going to insure them? It's a tough place to be. Hi, Rob. I know I'm a bit late with this letter, but I wanted to talk briefly about the loss of Joel Schumacher as a film director. The guy directed a lot of good movies, but unfortunately to cinema geeks is mostly known for destroying the Batman franchise with his Batman movies. Not only is this an overactive way to think, it's also not correct. While I certainly need to see more Schumacher movies, Batman Forever remains to this day my favorite Batman film, and I have that director to thank for it. For me, Batman Forever was an antidote for the excessive gothic darkness of Tim Burton's Batman Returns. The world of Forever has more color and, more importantly, more energy. The film is able to strike a better balance between exploring Batman as a persona while still being able to provide amazing excitement. With its neon colors and great performances, especially from Carey, O'Donnell, and Kilmer, the latter I almost killed at last year's London Film Festival and Comic-Con, yikes, Batman Forever stands out. It's become an underrated movie and doesn't deserve the hate it gets. No one said it was perfect, but it's also a solid movie, and I feel ignoring its events for future media with Michael Keaton reeks of snobbery. It's ironic that with both sequels to their movies, both Burton and Schumacher fell into the trap of thinking excess is a good thing. Batman and Robin, of course, would fall into the trap of doing the exact mistake Burton did with Returns. Both directors needed someone to rein them in because the studio certainly was encouraging all of this. Less or moderation is more. The biggest crime on how everything went down with Schumacher's Batman movies is that we never got the final movie, Batman Triumphant. By all accounts, it would have been a great way to end the series and a huge improvement over Batman and Robin. I still hold out hope that they revisit that movie one day with George Clooney and Chris O'Donnell. But they have to have Nicolas Cage as the Scarecrow, otherwise it would be for nothing. But I wish to talk about my own experiences of the film being released. Apart from 1989, the summer blockbuster season of 1995 remains the most interesting to me because of the different exciting movies that were coming out, especially for kids to see. I was about 12 or 13 when Forever was released. I didn't go to the cinema to see it. I was only allowed to see one movie due to my dad's budget. The movie I took my dad to see with me was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie. The idea of having a bigger budget version of a TV series is one of the reasons I've always been drawn so much to Star Trek Generations. The other two movies I could have seen was either Batman Forever or Casper. It was a great time to see all these exciting movies come onto the screen. Now, I'm sure we could all debate what we think of the three that was the most worthy. This isn't something I want to discuss because all three have their issues, but also have huge positives. Let's say they're all good in their own way. I will say part of my vivid recollections of this year wasn't just down to the trio of movies released together, but how their studios marketed them. The marketing was amazing. Fox already had the TV show going, so with Power Rangers, they released all sorts of tie-ins, whether it was Burger King action figures or action figures you could collect from special packs of Frosty's cereal. In a Tony the Tiger voice, including the White Ranger. Was that a Tony the Tiger voice? Great! There was also the tie-in video games. The Mega Drive Genesis was one of the obviously superior ones. Universal also wasn't getting lazy and did something clever with Casper and Ribena soft drinks. The idea went like this. You had different flavors of Ribena, strawberry, blackcurrant, apple, orange, etc., and in very limited cartons of that flavor would be replaced with lime flavor. If you got the lime flavor, you could win special prizes. Now, I forget what the prizes were. They were probably either a cash prize or a trip somewhere. I just love the concept of the promotion. Of course, then you had Warner Brothers going all out with Batman Forever marketing deals, and I think McDonald's, music videos, and tie-in video games. Again, the Sega Mega Drive Genesis version came out the best, and I feel is heavily underrated as well. People really love to hate that game for some reason. Me and my friends always enjoyed it. I find it funny the actual music for the game is the complete antithesis for the tone of the actual movie. I recommend finding the score on YouTube, either for that version or the Sega version, as it's pretty damn good. As it stands, Batman Forever gets a lot of hate, which is unwarranted. Critically speaking, it's not the best Batman movie. That honor goes to 1989's Batman. However, this is Joel Schumacher's 1995 movie of the most fun Batman movie ever made. You bet. That's why it's my favorite. That's why I'm saying thanks to Schumacher and everyone involved in the film. It's one of the Cape Crusaders' most entertaining movies now and forever. That's from Pedro. Nice. I like that. That's a very nice defense of Batman Forever, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I didn't love Batman Forever. You know, it suffered from problems. I mean, I prefer the more serious look at the Batman franchise, but pretty good. I enjoyed it. You know, why not? Let's see what you guys are saying over here in this. Let's see. Alexander Wilson says, Rob, drop that Pornhub. Well, I don't subscribe to Pornhub. Not a big Pornhub fan guy, but I appreciate that it's there, and I bet my 12-year-old self would have loved Pornhub. You could watch anything you want. Willow is here and says, I don't know if Vulcans are well endowed. Genitalia size is positively correlated with female promiscuity. Males need to outcompete each other's sperm, and Vulcans seem pretty monogamous from what I've seen. Do female Vulcans also undergo Ponfar? I would imagine that they do. I would imagine that's because it's a procreation time, so I would think that they would. I don't know if Vulcans are. I would think that Vulcans are just like everyone else. You know, they come in all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds. Yeah, males need to outcompete each other's sperm. And I do think Vulcans are monogamous. That's kind of a logical way to be. But I also think that Vulcans probably have amazing sex because it's all about pleasuring one another. And if that's what you're doing, if you're trying to give someone physical pleasure, you know, nothing is off limits. Nothing is taboo. I mean, obviously, maybe involving the pain of someone else is taboo. But for the most part, you know, you're Vulcan. I think Vulcans are probably some of the best lovers in the universe because they take the time to learn. So, yeah. Shook Nasty sends in a tip and says, did you hear about the Stan Lee universe? Yeah, I did. They're going back. That was reported today since you brought it up. Let's check it out. And I will read an article about it. Let me find it. Because I just read about it, and it sounds good to me. There is a lot of stories here. They're not the greatest stories in the world, but they're pretty good. Stargirl is leaving DC Universe and going to the CW, which is good for fans of that show. Man, I'm looking for, maybe it's not here yet. Maybe it's in the Hollywood Reporter or something. Oh yeah, here we go. Genius Brands and Stan Lee's POW Entertainment in joint venture for post-Marvel IP. Genius Brands International and Stan Lee's POW Entertainment have inked a deal to create Stan Lee's Universe, a joint venture that will assume worldwide rights across all media to Lee's post-Marvel output. Genius will develop 7 properties a year out of 100 original creations, including Tomorrow Men, String Bean, Black Fury, and Virus. The deal gives the new entity rights in perpetuity to the name, physical likeness, physical signature, live action and animated motion picture, television, online, digital publishing, comic books, merchandising, and licensing the IP, Genius said. Financial terms were not disclosed. The agreement is subject to due diligence. Genius Brands will be managing and controlling partner of the joint venture. So that's pretty neat. I think that's cool. I mean, any chance to preserve Stan Lee's legacy is obviously a good one. Koba's here, our favorite simian. Cobra said, did you have a fun 4th of July, Rob? I did. I didn't do much. I mean, we're here, but it was still fun. It was relaxing. Good to be here. Chilling out. Throgs at a Crossroads sends in a tip and says, I love that movie, Joe Satriani and all. I still wonder if I'd sell my soul, but then I realized you would have to believe in gods, which is something I don't. I love the movie, though. Let's not forget Jamie Hurt's huge crush back then. Well, that's good. I'm glad of that, Throg. I am glad of that. I was using your toilet paper again today. Thank you very much for sending it. I do appreciate it. Willow is here. Willow says, I've never seen the Hamilton musical and I've never even heard any of the songs. I've just started watching the film musical on Disney+. The way they cast for the play might make it a bit challenging to discuss American slavery. Yeah, it's, again, I don't think it was really about that necessarily. It was more about celebrating his whole life, because it's pretty, talking about a storied life, which I think is great. Gerald sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, yesterday I went to the movies. Wow. My local NCG theater had a limited reopening last weekend. It was self-serve popcorn and drinks. Ticket was $1.15, and I was the only one at the 1:30 p.m. show to see episode 7. It was awesome. That was one of two. Okay, hang on. One of two. After eating my popcorn, I wore a mask. It didn't bother me, and my glasses didn't fog up because of the air conditioning. It was only after the movie ended when I realized I was all alone. Also, episode 7 is a good Star Wars movie. Is it? I don't know. There's too many things in it I don't buy. Oops. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, what's your fave, Scarface or Carlito's Way? For me, Carlito is clearly the winner, as it has much more heart and Sean Penn's unrecognizable performance. Well, truth be told, I have 2 action figures. I have one of Carlito and one of Tony Montana, so they can still argue about it. But, you know, I like Carlito's Way a lot. But Scarface is this very much over the top. I mean, Carlito's Way is much more, while it's stylized, it's much more set in the real world. And Scarface is clearly in this heightened 80s cocaine-fueled phantasmagoria of Miami, which I love, man. I love it. I don't know if one's... I think Carlito's Way is probably a better movie, but god damn if I don't love watching Scarface. I love it. I love it. Good question, though. Stubble McShave is here. Hello, Stubble. Do you think the long hiatus of the movie theaters will result in a change of habit of the audience? I do. People have learned they can live without movie theaters, and that sucks. Will the audience return en masse when the theaters open, or will the audience's viewing habits have changed for the long haul? I think viewing. I do. I think that viewers are going to have different habits now. Unfortunately, I really, really do. Stan Marsh is here with one of two. As I mentioned before, that if Disney did a live-action remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, I always believed that Alan Rickman was the only guy to play Judge Frollo. I know he's dead, but I can dream, can't I? You can dream. You can. Stan goes on to say, a lot of people seem to want Jeremy Irons for the role. Is that a great choice? Hell yeah, but I think he's too embedded with Scar, and I don't think he would do it. What do you think of the idea, and how realistic is that possibility? I think he might do it. I mean, you know, why not? He's a chameleon. He's an actor. I think he should. I'm a huge fan of his, by the way. Why not? Why shouldn't he do it? Stub McShave goes on and says, the U.S. is behind the ball compared to many countries when it comes to the virus situation. Can you see a scenario where mid-budget movies will be released in theaters abroad with a VOD release in the U.S.? Yes, I can. I can see if push comes to shove and they can open No Time to Die and every other movie, and Tenet and every other movie in the world but not in America, and still make a decent return, they'll do it. There's no fealty to the United States here. None. So at least that's kind of the way I see it. Med6814 sends in a super chat and says, the Richard wanted you to know that Charlie Daniels died. Yes, I know. I talked about that early on in the show. I just hope Charlie Daniels is not seeing the devil right now. I hope he's not. Julius Goodwin is here and sends in a super chat and says, Charlie Daniels is dead at 83. Well, we know there's some mean fiddling going on in human heaven right now. I would love to see that. I'd love to see Charlie Daniels take on, the afterlife to see who's a better fiddle player. Yeah. Mukbong sends in a super chat and says, your live chat is talking sports team's name and if renaming Indians and Redskins is just more cancel culture. You know, I don't know. Life's problematic. I think probably, you're in a situation where it's an evolutionary thing, and the Redskins and the Indians, I can see them going. They can come up with new names for those. I really do. I think they can. They're not good. Drew Douglas says, "Hey Rob, I see Arrow Video is coming out with a Gamera Complete Adventures box set. Thoughts?" I will totally buy that. I love those new Gamera movies. They're great. They're really great. Nick Parrish is here. He says, "What's up, Rob? So I'm reporting back after making a grand return to the movies for the first time in months. This may shock you what I'm about to say, but it was probably the safest I felt being in a big public place since the pandemic started." No, I think it's good. But yeah, that's everyone's going to think about you, like you. I mean, you go back to the theater and you're like, can I be sitting here? Is it safe? It's like Marathon Man. Is it safe? I don't know. I think I'm not in any hurry to go out anywhere other than to the grocery store. Not with the rising caseload. It's terrible. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, "Many have said a theater is the last place to be right now, but it's the only place I've been in where masks were required, hand sanitizers in front of every auditorium, seating was spaced, and not one of the 11 people in the movie coughed once." Well, you're lucky. I don't know, man. Did I miss? No. I wonder. It's scary. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know, man. I don't know if I would get in a theater. I desperately want to, but I don't know. It's scary. It's scary out there. Eric Gant sends in a tip and says, "RE, studios recouping investment without theaters. Do you think using the pay-per-view model could work out? Possibly charging $50 to $100 per household for the one-time access to live streams, counting it at scheduled times?" No. I think you need to pack those houses. I mean, as much as I want that to happen, I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I wanted to, but I can't see it. I don't know. I'm at a loss. I mean, I don't think theaters are going to recover, or if they do, they're not going to be nearly what we thought they were. But we'll see. It's very hard to tell. Very, very hard to tell. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, this is a letter from Willow Yang. "Greetings, Rob. There appears to be much lament." By the way, if you like Willow Yang's letters, she does have a place on the Burnettwork website, a place of honor, where you can read her columns at Willow Talk. "Greetings, Rob. There appears to be much lament over the demise of popular franchises in modern day, with some attributing this to our current political climate. Personally, however, I do think that a number of the properties that people have cited were already in decline before the takeover of PC culture in recent years. I happen to enjoy the Star Wars prequels, but numerous Star Wars fans have bashed the films, so much so that for years I've actually pretended to hate them in order to avoid ridicule. The fact of the matter is, Star Wars has received plenty of ire from disappointed fans prior to its acquisition of Disney. Indeed, some have speculated that George Lucas sold his franchise in part due to the backlash that he had received from people accusing him of ruining their childhood. The Terminator franchise hasn't been faring particularly well since Judgment Day. The best things it's managed to churn out was a TV series that got axed after 2 seasons. I thought that Sarah Connor was okay. Was done dirty in Rise of the Machines. John Connor may be the future savior of humanity, but we've only known him as a bratty kid up to that point. It was Sarah Connor who was the hero of the first two Terminator films, and she was killed off screen before the movie even started. Lame. Now, I don't hate Rise of the Machines. I am for fridging one of the characters. That's very funny. Pardon me. Now, I don't hate Rise of the Machines for fridging one of the most iconic female action heroes in American cinema. I actually didn't mind the movie. Story-wise, it was just a rehash of the new lead hero. However, Arnie was still great, and the ending was pretty rad. I like that they tried doing something different with Salvation by finally taking us into the future, but the movie wasn't good. Although it did give us Revolution's Bail Out remix. And while I liked the exploration of alternate timelines, Genesis was a convoluted mess. Terminator was already saddled by 3 mediocre to bad films going into Dark Fate. The Lord of the Rings are my favorite movies of all time, and I was excited when the Hobbit movies came out so that I could see more of Middle-earth. I enjoyed the first 2 movies, but they were definitely a step down in quality compared to their predecessors. The Battle of the Five Armies, unfortunately, was just bad, in my opinion. For me, the movie completely failed to build any drama for the final confrontations with Smaug and Azog. I found the action to be empty and unsatisfying because I wasn't emotionally invested in the characters as I had been in Lord of the Rings. The romance, because they just had to have one, between Tauriel and Killy was also very cringy to me. I'm cautiously optimistic about the Amazon series that's currently in development, but I'm glad that Warner Brothers haven't tried milking more films out of this franchise. Finally, I want to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, which, for me, is similar to the Transformers franchise in that they haven't really churned out a really good movie. In my totally subjective opinion, of course, since the first one. The first Transformers was mindless fun. The subsequent movies were just offensive. And it's not because of the racial caricatures, which I didn't even notice until other people pointed them out, and the lingering shots of female characters' cleavages and derrieres. The movie was an insult to my intelligence. I like big balls, and I cannot lie, but showing a pair of clanging metal testicles on a Transformer is just juvenile. I'm glad for the soft reboot they did with Bumblebee. The new film has renewed my interest in the franchise. Now, Pirates certainly isn't as eye-gougingly god-awful as Transformers, but that hasn't been a subject. There hasn't been a subsequent movie that I've enjoyed nearly as much as the first. I love Johnny Depp's Captain Jack Sparrow and Curse of the Black Pearl, and I really feel that later installments have gone full slapstick with him and undermined his character as well. He was humorous and eccentric in the first few films, but crafty and badass. Some people are freaking out over the announcement of the new movie with Margot Robbie as the lead, and quite frankly, I'm not enthused about it either. However, I do really feel that the franchise with Depp has played itself out at this point and needs to take it in a new direction. I agree with that too. I think Margot Robbie could be fine in the role of another pirate. In the current political climate having an effect, is the current political climate having an effect on our entertainment? Sure. However, I wouldn't forget history and pretend that a lot of the franchises were thriving quality-wise. Until the last several years, it appears to be a long-standing practice of Hollywood to milk properties as much as possible until they've been driven to the ground and are no longer making money. As for the concern that some have expressed over the influence of mainland China, I don't like that either. However, it's worth noting that you can't push for diversity and social justice in movies while simultaneously catering to a country where the government is trying to expel African immigrants, imprison and sterilizing Muslims, and ordering the censorship of Bohemian Rhapsody to remove references to Freddie Mercury's sexuality. The two agendas are incompatible. I'm not even sure a movie like Shang-Chi will perform well in China. I don't know if a Western-made martial arts film starring a relatively unknown Chinese actor will appeal. I don't know. To a Chinese audience. Mulan has an advantage since it's being led by a popular Chinese actress who's openly supported the Communist Party in the past. In the end, I think that money will ultimately supplant moralistic gains. That's interesting. I like that. Moralistic stances. Perhaps this is a cynical view, but to quote Gordon Gekko, greed. for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Best regards, Willow. P.S. I wasn't going to chime in on the conversation about having sexual relations with aliens, but Vesna has certainly given me a lot to think about. I might give my take on the subject in a letter further down the road. Well, you do that, absolutely, 100%, because I will be here and I'll read it. Best regards, Willow. P.S. I wasn't going to chime in on the conversation about having sexual relationships with aliens, but Vesna has certainly given me a lot to think about. I might give my take on the subject in a letter further down the line. Well, Willow, whatever letter you choose to say, we will be here waiting to read it aloud. So thank you for that. I always feel it's a great day when I get my Willow Yang letter. I feel like I've done something, like I've accomplished something, which is great. Love it. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Let's see. I've still got more letters. Let's see what we have here. This one comes from another letter from Omar94. Hi, Rob. I wanted to give more recommendations to everyone. What am I, dyslexic? For screenplays to read, so here goes. My first recommendation is a Lethal Weapon 2 script dated November 1988. There's no writer's name attached, but I gather it was Jeffrey Boehm, since he is that first main writer. Overall, I liked it, but considered... Overall, I liked it, but I think the final film was better, as I consider Lethal Weapon 2 the best in the series. The main differences are there were less humor. The opening action scene is at an airport and a highway rather than a car chase. Rika is called Jill Townsend. Leo Getz doesn't constantly say okay. The final battle at the end was really short, and some new scenes, like one where the South Africans kill 3 cops at their homes. The explosive toilet scene was a little different, and it ends with Riggs and Murtaugh letting Leo go free by dropping him off at the California-Mexico border. Well, that's a really interesting take, Omar. I like that a lot. Absolutely. Let's see. Where else do we have to go? Oh, man. This one, Calvin Bowles. Okay. Hello, Calvin. Dear Rob, something happened today that most people would consider no big deal. But remember, it takes only a spark to burn down an entire building. About 6 months ago, I bought Gone with the Wind on Amazon Prime. I paid for it so I could own the movie. I'd watched it many times, and it is one of my favorite films. Today, I decided to watch it, and now they put a disclaimer at the beginning of the film. This is a film I supposedly own, and they put this alteration to it. I know what some people will say. They did not alter the body of the film, and it's true, they did not, but I can see this as a possible spark. If they can do this, what's to stop them from removing the part when Scarlett slaps Prissy? That part offends me as well, but I would never say take it out of the film. But if they wanted to, they could. Now, I do not object to what is in the disclaimer, and it is just, was put in front of the movie theater after I'd purchased it months later. I see this as dangerous, and I understand why you prefer physical media. With the cancel culture, are we going to see movies that you supposedly own altered and look at this disclaimer as an alteration? With less Blu-ray players being made and more people streaming, are we possibly looking at a world that may only see stuff that does not offend anyone? That possibility scares me. What if you own an entire season of a show and the people who produce it decide to put up an episode they could do it and nothing else could stop them? What if they decide Gone with the Wind is a movie you paid for and it's not appropriate? Could you log in and find it gone? I do not have the answer, and the possibility is scary. No, it's definitely scary, and I've been saying that for a long time. I'm not a fan. I really am not. I mean, I think what they did with Gone with the Wind was pretty damn good. I like that they got that film that film professor. I thought she was good. I thought what she said was good, and I have no problem putting movies into context. And Gone with the Wind is a big one. But whose context? Are we going to have, or is somebody going to pick, like, okay, here's our context, and we'll measure up the movies to these things? The problem is we don't know. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and it's scary to me. I get a little bit, I mean, I'm kind of terrified about where we're going. I mean, it's odd. And it is odd. I mean, I worry. It's so, who's the moral arbiter of all this? What, something that doesn't bother me might bother somebody else. So are my rights not as important as that other person? I hope not, because that would kind of suck. This next letter comes on, it's by Taylor Carrington. Whining about movies. Congrats on 5 years, you and Liz. Another great movie I watched for the first... Oh, wait, you know what? I have to read this tonight. This is a whining about movies letter. Just so you people know, Elizabeth and I are doing our 49th whining about movies at 7 p.m. tonight. We are going to be discussing A Clockwork Orange, which she had never seen. How cool is that? Pretty exciting, actually. It was always fun to watch it. I hadn't seen it in a long time, so it was pretty cool. This one comes from Brian Eng. Every time I get a Brian Eng letter, I'm like, uh-oh, this is going to be some moral or social quandary. I don't know. Oh, wait. This is also for Elizaviews. Well, I guess I've got 2 letters for Elizaviews. For those of you who are interested, tonight at 7 p.m. on the Burnettwork, we will be discussing A Clockwork Orange, which is very exciting. One of my favorite movies of all time. Let's see. Nick Parrish sends in a tip and says, sorry, Rob, that anonymous super chat detailing how it was like in the theater was me continuing from the super chat before that. Well, Nick, good to hear. I mean, you know what? You're the only person I've even talked to about going to a movie. So good on you, sir. Congratulations. I'm glad you got to go see one. Throg at Thunderdome sends in a tip and says, the last half of Thunderdome with the kids bored the shit out of me. I felt bad skipping it when I showed the films to my 15-year-old son. Explain the tragedy. Miller barely there. Mad Max Fury Road was what I had always wanted. I wish they could make more. I don't know, man. I used to think that, but now going back and watching the kids in Beyond Thunderdome, it makes it more of a fantasy movie. I like that. I really like that. Nay. So watch it again. Don't skip it. Go back and watch it. Watch it with your kids, man. See what they say about the end. Nay, thank you very much for generously supporting the channel. Nay says, I keep thinking of the Watchmen series recently. I know people are reluctant to approve it because Moore doesn't approve, but I do think it did justice with Dr. Manhattan. He can't see the future because he's already seen it, but people hate him for it. Ooh, okay. I love Watchmen very, very much. I've read it so many times, and I have a love-hate relationship with Lindelof's series. On one hand, I think it was hugely ambitious. And I did like what they did with Dr. Manhattan, although I don't know why he would just have dumped Laurie. I mean, he's just off with another woman, and I kind of don't get that. Why would he do that? But I liked a lot of what they portrayed, but I think it did do justice to Dr. Manhattan. But I'll tell you what I thought at the end. I mean, basically, your big bad is an Asian woman whose mother took an opportunity, and now she exists, and she's looking for approval from her father. I mean, for all the talk about the Tulsa race riots, the destruction of Black Wall Street, what does it say about ambitious Asian women? Not many good things. And I think that you can't trade one oppression for another. So I do think the racial politics of Watchmen is a bit muddled. But I do like what they did with Dr. Manhattan. I liked all of it. I'd like to see more in that world. I know a lot of the status quo with those people has changed a lot, but I would definitely want to see that. But yeah, it's a weird thing to try and talk about. It really is. It's because it feels like, I do feel like Watchmen, it was a creator-owned thing that because it keeps getting published and published and published, that DC has sort of put Alan Moore's, it's like what Prince said about his own music at Warner Brothers. Alan Moore has basically been enslaved to Warner Brothers. His work will be exploited for all time. And I don't think that's good. I just don't think that's good. I mean, who knows? Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, I saw an article in The Guardian of Sam Mendes starting a fund for British workers in the movie industry. I think it's the theater industry, isn't it? Maybe it was movies. I read it as theater, like the theater. He pressured Netflix to donate $500,000 because of their windfall in the pandemic. What are your thoughts, and could a similar thing happen in the U.S.? Yes, I mean, Sam Mendes is out there raising money, but it's not going to help. I mean, it's not just the theaters themselves, it's the studios. The studios can be in trouble too because, like I said before, it's tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that was borrowed, and now they can't, the fruits of all that, they can't do it. I mean, it's not good. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's okay. Nay sends in another chat and says, I also want a campaign to see Holy Motors on Elizaviews. I love Holy Motors. I have the Blu-ray. I think that's a very good suggestion. If not this week, you know what? We'll do Holy Motors next week. Holy Motors, that's a really good idea. I really love Holy Motors, and it would definitely be something that we should totally watch. Wolverine 2016 sends in a super chat and says, I think DC's Stargirl moving to the CW sucks. Should have gone to HBO Max so the quality could stay the same. Now it will look cheap like the rest of DC CW shows. Wolverine, I think you're right. But you know what? The end of DC Universe is nigh. I mean, I feel like I should walk around like Rorschach, Walter Kovacs, and Watchmen. The end of the DC Universe is nigh. I mean, not the comic universe, but DC Universe as a streaming platform. It's all going to be absorbed, so it's not surprising to me. Maybe they will retain that production value. I hope they do. But I think you're absolutely right. Because what else are you going to do? It's really hard. It's hard. I don't know. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I have to, believe it or not, go to work. Got a day job. Got the little show that I'm working on that one day will be announced. Going to go work on that. So I have to leave now. This is a shorter show, but I will be back at 7 o'clock with the lovely Elizabeth for Elizaviews episode 49, A Clockwork Orange. So come and join us in a mere, 4.5 hours. Come join us for a bottle of wine where we will discuss one of my favorite films of all time, Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. Elizabeth has not told me what it's about, or I know what it's about, what she's about. She did not tell me her thoughts, so I don't know what she's going to say, which is going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to bring an end to Robservations episode 460. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel very generously. It's very nice that you guys and girls and gentle beings and kind souls across the 28 known galaxies do that. I would like to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank, of course, Mike Bodden. I want to thank the Richard. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank Jordy Lyons. I want to thank Haynock for being great supporters of the channel there. And obviously, I want to thank you guys and girls and everyone. The Richard, don't forget, if you go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page or the Whining About Movies Facebook page, the Richard will hook you up. He's always throwing crazy watch parties. And I want to thank all of you. If you want to send me letters, you can to the Burnettwork.net website. It's free of charge. Just send me letters. And I want to say thank you to Nay for suggesting, I think you've suggested this before, Nay, Holy Motors, which is, if you haven't seen it, it would be a good movie to do. I think we'll watch Holy Motors next week, either Monday or Tuesday, so you can all catch up. Maybe the Richard can find it to do a watch party, because it's pretty wacky. It's good stuff, but Holy Motors will be a lot of fun to talk about. So Nate, thank you for that. And with all of that out of the way, I'll see you at 7 o'clock tonight on Whining About Movies for A Clockwork Orange. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as I always like to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I bring Robservations 460, the show about something, to an end. And I remind all of you to have a better day. And as I've always said, I do mean that sincerely. And I'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock.